Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome along. It is Inspire and Be Inspired. It's 8 o'clock here on the Costa Blanca, and we come to you again with another weekly motivational conversation, occasional life hacks, where I get to talk to people from all walks of life. It may be a music conversation or it may be something work related. If it's the first time you happen to be passing by, then my name is Andy Ward and it is a pleasure to have your company. As we are getting more people join the stream, I will say to all of the crew coming back and checking out the recording, please do leave comments or replies to anything that we bring up in this conversation. Both myself and Lynn will be happy to see that our words have reached you. We are broadcasting on the official Inspire and Be Inspired page, and it's also going to be archived over on my YouTube channel, as you can see on the screen. If you are watching live as well, feel free to comment. It's going to take us a little while for people to join the stream, so I'm going to crack on and tell you all about tonight's conversation. You can see a flashy new camera. I should be looking nice and crisp. We've got some nice lights in the studio as well that should be a lot brighter with this new technology, and I'll be talking about that as we get to the end of the stream. A journey through social work, finding the nice in the trickiest of times. That's the conversation I'm going to be having tonight with my esteemed guest, the lovely Lin Henson. I will bring her onto the stream now. Lin, you are live for the world to see. How are you?
Good evening. I'm well, thank you.
That's a very, very sheepish good evening. Do I find you well? Are you ready for this?
I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this,
You're
definitely.
ready for this. Anybody that knows you will know that you're far from shy. Although at the same time, I think you may have shy tendencies from time to time. Is that a fair? Is that a fair
Um,
assumption? A fair observation?
yeah, I let other people be right in the front. I'm the one at the back waving.
That's not how I remember you, and we'll talk about how I remember you a little later on. So I'll say again, as more and more people join us, do feel free to let me know that you're here. Please leave a like of the video and even share it if you can. It does make a big difference. I can see already that I need to change something there because the chat alerts are coming up behind you. Phil Madison joins us. We say hi to Phil and Kelly. Thank you for sharing this stream. Right, so Lynn, a journey through social work. Over the course of the next however long it's going to be, we would like to find out about yourself. We would like to find out about your journey in social work. And we'll also must remember that it's important. We're going to talk about fostering and your very passionate thoughts and beliefs and wishes for more people to become involved with that. As you know, because you regularly support the channel, you regularly comment on many of the videos that I've shared. We like to make it as interactive as possible, and I can see already we have people joining us. Mrs. Ward says, hello, beautiful. Let me try and make sure this works now. Katrina says, demure. Okay,
Oh,
that's
lovely.
nice. Scrolling down, Angela says, hello, the lovely Lynn. Joanne Hill says,
Mm.
hi. And Mrs. Battersby says, hello, everybody. So thank you again for being
Girls.
here. I will come back and talk to you as often as I can, guys. Feel free to comment as much as you want. So let's get into this. Lynn, please do tell me all about yourself. Mrs. Henson, so do tell
Mhm.
us who Lynn was born as and when, in as roundabout a way as possible.
Well, the first thing probably most people don't know about me is that actually I'm Melinda, not Lynn. Ah.
Wow, okay.
Um, Apparently means sweet as honey. I'm not so sure, but yeah, that was my name before I went on to a school, and there was another Melinda, and she was like, "There can't be two of us. There can only be one of us." So my name got shortened to Lynn, and it just stayed that way, and it kind of fitted because it was. I think my nickname was One Gin Lynn, and that all
At
kind of went
school, at 11.
after that. Maybe. Well,
So
yeah,
I,
possibly.
I'm going
Well,
to do my very best. I'm going to do my very best to not talk all over you. You'll have to forgive me.
okay,
What I
no
will
problem.
ask: how did the name change go down with the olds?
I think I had really liberal family. You know, my mum was a concert pianist, so she was kind of busy doing concerts and playing, and didn't quite notice probably what me and my sister were up to. So we had quite a free liberal, probably had a bit too much fun childhood, but yeah, music was a big part of our lives, but in a very different way to the kind of music that I listen to now, because it was all classical and
So tell us a little bit about that then. Tell us a little bit about that life. So your mum was a classical pianist
yeah.
and your dad.
So my dad was, I think he was a youth worker originally. He was the first. He did the first year of Open University, and when that first existed. So my memory of him was him in the study, studying away. But he was a youth worker and then became a sort of counsellor and therapist. He lives in Canada now. But yeah, so I think that my parents left separate when I was 10. So it
So you
was
were born
just,
late 60s.
yeah, 67, born in the 60s. So there's kind of late 70s thing for me as that was an interesting time because my sister was properly into punk and just being a few years younger. So me and my friend Nikki, if Josie's watching, she's going to kill me. We just used to nick all her clothes. So we were kind of punks because my sister was a punk. But I used to secretly listen to Diana Ross and things like that when my friends weren't around, more Motown stuff. But when my friends were around, it was like had to put Crass on and Sex Pistols, which I did love too. But it was just like a cacophony of noise, really, to upset my mum probably more than or get a reaction probably more than anything. But yeah, they were fun times. So
And always
music
down
just
on the south coast.
yeah, we born in London and then moved down to Margate, or well, Kingsgate, which is kind of a little place outside of Margate, um, and then moved to Canterbury when I was 16 to go to college, and I was studying nursery nursing. So I'd wanted to be a nurse, wanted to be like Angela, do nursing, but I failed all my sciences, passed all the sort of humanities subjects, but science I didn't do so well in. And so I did nursery nursing. My aim was to be a paediatric, sort of in the paediatric department, looking after little babies, or go nannying and travel the world. That was that was what I was going to do with that. And but instead, I had a baby. I think
Okay.
there's a high pregnancy rate on the nursery nursing course figure. Quite a lot of girls, I think, left and had babies during the time I was there. But yeah, I my son was born in 1984, so
Okay.
I was still 16, and yeah, I mean that compared to a name change, I guess that got a bit more um, attention from my family, but not a lot more. It was like, oh, lovely having a baby, it's all quite quite cash. But I think that was I guess that was the start of the time of me thinking about social work, really. Because at 16, having a baby, one of the things that I guess people expected you not to do very well. But I loved babies. So I was just in my element. It was just me and my boy. And yeah, I had quite a lot of fun, really, being a young mum. It didn't seem like a difficult thing at all at the time.
So
Um,
you'd left home, or were you? Because I do recall we had a very brief conversation, and you said you found yourself back home. So
yeah, so I was kind of yeah, I'd lived away from home for a little while, then gone back home when I realised I was pregnant. I didn't tell my mum that I was pregnant when I went back home. I just said, "Oh, can I come? Can I come with you?" And she was just buying a house in Canterbury, so I moved into a basement flat in Canterbury. In fact, I remember house hunting with her, knowing I was pregnant, And one house she looked at, it had a sort of like fantastic attic room, but there was this tiny, ladder and this little hole to get up into the room. She was like, "Oh, that'd be great if you're staying or you're going to be here." And I'm thinking, I ain't going to get through that in a few months' time.
Wow.
Yeah, I kept all of that to myself, quietly to myself, until I think it was too late for there to be any discussion about what might be done. And yeah, my son was born in July '84,
Oh.
month
Well,
before.
I've just something caught my attention. I'm sorry to distract you. Sarah Battersby says, I have so much in common with you, Lynn, and Beverly's agreeing as well. So this is stuff obviously you guys have maybe already spoken about before at length.
Being
I'm
young
trying.
mums, I think there's a few of us out there.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
trying to read more of these comments so I can keep up with them without having to interrupt you. Do me a favour, put that piece of paper down, stop fidgeting with it. It's really coming through on the
Sorry,
microphone.
a bit noisy.
It's all right. I'd rather
Okay,
tell you now than an hour into the conversation. Okay,
sorry.
so let's skirt very quickly over the fact that there must have been somebody else in the picture. Oh, what's going on? There must have been someone else in the picture for the baby to come along. Tell us about that part of your
The
life.
Immaculate Conception,
Okay,
Andy.
right.
No, yeah. So my boyfriend at the time was 8 or 9 years older than me, quite a lot older than me, and he was just utterly horrified that I was pregnant. And his first reaction was, "Well, you're obviously not going to keep it." And my reaction to that was, "Yeah, I am. So sod off if that's what you think."
Hmm.
And didn't really give him much of a chance to kind of backpedal on that. So I just decided I would do it on my own, and I did.
Okay,
And although I
so
always
that was
had
the end of that.
pretty much that was the end of that, and although um, I'd always said, this is your son, and you can have as much contact with him and much time with him as you want to. He was very sporadic about it. What did a little bit and then didn't, and then did a little bit and then didn't. And I know they're friends on Facebook, but I think they very rarely see each other. Well, they haven't seen each other for years and years and years, probably 15 years or so. From the, I think I tried to help them keep that contact, but
Hmm.
yeah, it wasn't easy. So
You're having to force it. Okay, so I guess late teens into your 20s then the nursery nursing didn't work.
So,
um
but what I did was that, so that I could stay at home and look after my son. A child-minded. I worked in restaurant in the evenings when I could get childcare, and but most importantly, I was able to stay at home with my son because I nannied. I looked after another little boy from when he was 12 weeks old till he was 4, and then did the same again with another child. But one of the things I also did in that time was I bumped into a youth worker who was putting up a notice in the library that said about a sort of teenage mothers group, or teenage parents group. And she said to me, because I was there with my baby, I was obviously at the library getting books or something, and she said that she really needed someone to help her set up this group. Um, you know, would I be interested? Because I'd asked her what it was about, which was really clever of her, because if she'd have said, "Are you interested in coming along?" I'd have said, "I don't need anything like that. I'm fine, thanks. I can do it all on my own." But because she asked for help, whether I would be interested in being involved in it, I went along. And of course, that was just to get me to go along. She realised that I was obviously very young, and this teenage mothers group was kind of formed, and I carried on going. It was just once a week, sort of a drop in for a couple of hours. Um, but then she left. She moved to Devon, and I wanted to keep the group going. And there was a few of us there, not very many. But I just kept up. I was in the newspaper saying, there's a group for us young mums, come along, be part of it, help me, get something going. And from that, I met a friend who I'm still friends with now. Um, Someone that had actually been in the hospital when I had Josh. So it was like I kind of recognized her. But that group went from 2 hours a week to 3 days a week as a drop-in centre for parents under the age of 21. And we
So
got funding for
tell me a
services.
little bit about what that entailed to someone who wouldn't have experienced that. What would have happened in the group?
In that
Just
group.
a support network.
It was kind of a support. It was a place for young people to come who were parents, but allowing them a space to be young people. We had a creche facility so that our babies and children could be looked after, and so the focus could be on us as young people, about our needs, about what we wanted to do with our lives. A lot of the girls that came along, and they were all women. I mean, it was open to any parent under 21, but they were all women. Lots of their issues were about um, struggle with finance, housing, um, trying to get work. A lot of them had partners or boyfriends that were in prison. Lots of very troubled young people there. And I kind of ran this group not knowing what I was doing. Hearing their stories just filled me full of horror that some of these young women were in such a difficult situation. And I had my own home by that time. I was 18. I'd I'd bought my own house, and I just my house looked like a women's refuge because I just hear their stories about what they were suffering and what was happening for them at home, and I just kind of like they'd come back to mine, and
Bring
it's
them
just
in. Bring them in.
and I
Yeah.
kind of thought I really want to do this. I want to work with families. I want to work with children, but I don't know what the bloody hell I'm doing, and I think I need some help with this because I don't I knew that I wasn't boundaried, and I was just we were all in it together. And I thought, this is what I want to do as a career, to work with people. But I think I need some qualifications. So I then went and did an A level part time, 1 night a week. I did a 1 night a week access course into uni, and then I did a part time social psychology and social policy degree, which then led me finally, when Josh was 10, so it's 94, to a full time master's degree program with a diploma in social work. So, and the women's group had carried on running all that time, um, and continued to after I left. So, it was a great thing that carried on. But yeah, that was really my route into social work, because partly because I knew I needed to support myself, my son, and keep a roof over my head. And I wanted to do more than just look after one baby at a time, nannying and working in restaurants. I think I had a cleaning job as well. I don't know how I did it all really. I was studying, looking after my son. Oh, it makes me tired thinking of it really. Um, but social work always really it had such a bad press. I don't know if you remember in the 80s. What was the joke? What's the difference between a Rottweiler and a social worker? It's easier to get your kids back off a social worker, off a Rottweiler. It was the whole point, because it was when the Rottweilers were getting a really bad press at attacking children, and
So
social workers
what was the
got.
misconception? Tell us about the because my only when I think of social worker, I'm probably getting it completely wrong. I'm thinking of like a bloke with leather patches on his elbows and a tweed jacket, or maybe I'm thinking about a history teacher. I don't know. So I've never really had much contact with that area in life. So to the uninitiated, tell us the misconceptions.
Well, they used to be seen as a bunch of old hippies, really, with the open-toed sandals and driving a Citroen 2CV or something. That was a kind of image. But I think in the 80s and the 90s, there became more and more press about children being removed from parents in a way that they shouldn't be, or then there were children were dying, and then the press would be, social workers hadn't done enough. So the whole sort of image of social work has always been um, different to, if you think we all have the experience of being in some sort of education system that's universal. Police are universal in that, either people know that they're there to protect you, or um, and of course with health, that we all use the health service. But social work is a kind of is uh, is set aside. It's for a different group of people other than ourselves, is what most middle class people would think, other than if they want to adopt children. So I think the image of social work has always been either people who are over interfering in other people's lives, or they're not doing enough to protect vulnerable children, and finding that line where actually, you know you are both protecting vulnerable children, and being utterly respectful and supportive of people's right to a private life, and to a family life, trying to get that balance, the balance between intervention and empowering people to live their very best lives. So I think
Right, because by the very nature of the roles of social workers, there does tend to be some kind of trauma or some kind of issues where the intervention is needed.
yeah,
So that would have led you down a path where invariably you were dealing with troubled, if not single parents, definitely the product of broken homes, and that would eventually, rub off on the children, right?
for sure. And as someone that might, came from a broken home as a teenage mum, that I might have had all sorts of ticks against me that might have meant that I would need social work intervention. And in fact, I actually did get support from social services. I think when Josh was about 2, I asked for some help. I said, I need to have some time. I'm a teenager. I need to have some time that's just for me. And they actually helped support and fund a place at nursery school 2 days a week. So that gave me some time that then I could start studying. And so I had seen them as being a support service rather than as something punitive.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if you're working in child protection, that's that, and you're on the other side of that, that can feel very different. So yeah, I think when I in my studies, I was lucky to have placement in both in the probation service. So I was a probation officer for 6 months, at the age of 25 or something,
And what
and
age group were you dealing with?
from 18 up to I think my eldest client was in his late 60s. I mean, I had a guy who used to like fax me to say he couldn't make it into his appointment. He's a businessman, and in the days of faxes, and I'd see him driving around in his Jag, but he'd have to come in and have a weekly session with his probation officer to his 25-year-old student. I can't imagine what he thought about that, really. But I worked with, starting off in probation, I worked with sort of offenders, with a huge range of offences, from very minor offences and driving offences, to sex offenders and fire setters, and yeah, sort of the whole gamut, really. But from that placement, I then went on to have a placement in child protection, um, and did some work in the fostering team as well. And both of those combined really led me to want to work with young offenders. I enjoyed the probation, but I wanted to work with young people. went to work with kids. So my first job in social work was, working for the Youth Offending Service, which was fantastic. I mean, there's nothing like working with kids who really, really don't want to be in a room with you, to
Wow, that
really.
that would that fills me with dread. That fills me with dread. I had enough struggles in my own mind with my own kids, let alone with troubled kids on the outside. Your patience. You have Someone made a comment earlier. Actually, I can see it on the screen. Beverly said, "I always knew you were an angel." I mean, such a noble position to put yourself in. Tell us about some of the circumstances, some of the situations you found yourself.
I mean, it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because when the police go out to a dangerous situation, there'll always be two of them. When a social worker is sent out or a probation officer is sent out to visit a young person in the home, often in really difficult, living in really difficult circumstances, we go on our own. And I used to turn up. I'd be The courts would sentence want to sentence a young person to custody, and before that they could do that, they wanted something called a pre-sentence report, and that would come to the youth justice team, and I would get a name and an address, and I'd have to turn up to wherever this kid lived with, in whatever circumstances they were in, and say, "Hi, I'm here to do a report on you before you are sentenced," or obviously visit them in prison if they were remanded, and then have to get them to tell their story and look at the reasons why they committed those offences, the circumstances they were living in, and then make a recommendation for sentence. And then we would work with those kids if they were given a 2-year or 3-year probation order, or if they were in prison, we'd visit them and support them through out into the community the other side, with the sole aim of whatever we recommended was to reduce the risk of them reoffending. And that was the reason for us being there. But those kids, the reasons they were offending, I mean, they had no reason not to, really, is how I saw it for a lot of them. And the 5 years that I worked with those young people, more and more you could see that the family circumstances they were living in, and the fact that they really didn't have anyone rooting for them and sticking by them time and time and time again, which is what all kids need. Um,
You're
and so
fidgeting again,
many of
aren't you?
them,
You're fidgeting with something again.
so many of them had been in care, so many of them, So I guess that was one of the reasons I then went into fostering. That, and you know, we used to have. I mean, it was crazy some of the things we did. I remember I used to do out of hours um, court work on a Saturday. So you'd have a kid remanded to custody on Friday night. They'd have to appear in court on the Saturday morning. And if they were under a certain age, they couldn't remand them to prison. They had to remand them to local authority accommodation. And if their offences were very serious, which they tended to be, which is why they were sort of there over the weekend, they would remand them to a secure unit. So I don't, most people sort of think of prisons, but there's also secure units where they keep young people who are, under, maybe 15, 16 or
We
14.
lived near one in Birmingham. I know there's a very famous one in Erdington.
There is, I've been to it, yeah. So in the whole country, we used to go up and down the whole country because there aren't very many of them. But like there was one occasion where this kid was committed really serious offence. He was quite a dangerous young person, and they have him in the cells. They bring him up to the court. They remand him to local authority accommodation, and we get the order for a secure unit. I then, as the out of hours social worker for the Youth Justice Service, have to then find a secure unit to take him somewhere in the country, and then wait for the escorts to come and get them. And at this time, so they did that. I'd managed to find a secure unit that would take him. It was in Oxfordshire. We were at that point down in Dover, so they had to come from there. So the people that hold them in the cells, that had been privatised, so I can't remember who they were. Something Connect Four, whatever they're called. I can't remember, Group Four or something. Uh, the judge says, right, the magistrates say, right, he's over to you. Um, the people that hold him in the cell say, we can no longer hold him. He's now remanded to the local authority. You're the local authority. Here he is. So they've brought this kid up to the court with three guards, you know, to keep an eye on him. They've had him locked up, and then they just give him to me, and we're sitting on
Not
the wall.
handcuffed, not restrained,
No,
nothing.
no, 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 no. They give him to me, and I have to wait for a driver and two escorts because they decided he's quite dangerous and he probably won't behave himself in the car, and two escorts to come and get him. But in the meantime, they won't hold him in the cells because they've got no grounds to. He's now over to the local authority. So we just sit on the wall, you know, outside, and I say, you hungry? It's like, yeah, like, we go get something to eat. I go and get him something to eat. We're sitting there, and he sort of looks around and he says, so I could just run, couldn't I? And it's like, yeah, you could. And in these shoes, honey, I'm not going to run after you. But if you do, when they catch you next time, they won't remand you to local authority accommodation. You'll be in Feltham. So I just, it would be better for us to hang out than for you to do that. And he did. He just sat there and he was absolutely fine. The magistrates, they're leaving for the day. They're like, bye, Mr. Edmund, as I was
It
then,
beggars belief. It beggars belief, doesn't it? Because some of the tales that we heard before from the situations that other workers in, for Angela's story, for example, in the NHS, some of the stories that you get told there, you think, how is that possible? And then as the years go on, I'm sure situations get worse and worse. Let me just say very quickly, DJP is here. Good evening, sir. He says Group Four. You got there in the end with that.
thank you.
And I believe this is a friend of yours. Josie Scott says you are a very, very patient angel.
That's my
So,
sister.
hi, Josie.
She's in
Thank you
New
for commenting.
Zealand.
Oh,
She's
really?
must be early.
Yeah,
Morning,
she's
sis.
just got up. Good morning. Okay, so there are so many different situations, so many circumstances, so many events that you could reel off. But you mentioned something there about fostering that we wanted to really highlight. You wanted to get into that because I use the same phrase with Angela as well when she found her calling. There was something in you that you just felt you clearly needed to offer. You were that vulnerable person yourself at one point, and you wanted to offer some solace for other people. To tell
Yeah.
us about that.
Well, the route to fostering or going to working in fostering really did come from working with all those young people, so many of them in custody. A huge proportion of them had been in the care system, and at 16 were out of the care system, had no one sort of seeing, still supporting them. And you only have to look at your own children in their teens to know that they don't stop needing full care when they're 16. Far from it. It's almost that's when they need more. And although I was independent at that age and was able to be, I did still have family love and support and that kind of belief that you can do anything. And that's why I think I was able to do what I did and bring up my son at a young age. But these kids just have nobody. They have absolutely no one. And, I remember going to see a family, a young man who was on a probation order at the age of, he was 16. And I went to his home on Christmas Eve to do a visit. And there was one Christmas card on the mantelpiece, one Christmas card. And it was from me. It was from his, as his social worker. It was really, depressing, really. He just had nobody. And I think the fostering thing, what families can bring or individuals can bring to the lives of children is just, it's immeasurable. And I just thought, I want to work with foster carers to see if I can support them well enough that they, when they're looking after a teenager like these kids, that they can be supported not to give up,
Hmm.
because it's really hard to hang on in there with these kids. They will push and push and push. They don't trust anyone. They don't trust adults. I mean, why would they? Because if you imagine that your parents, if your parents can abuse you or reject you, then anyone can. If your own birth parents, if your own birth family give up on you or harm you, then anyone can do that. So, that they just had such little trust in adults. And I think foster carers at that time weren't really recognised. The role that they took, they weren't well supported, they weren't well enough trained. They certainly weren't well enough paid to be giving up work and doing what they were doing. And I think it really showed, in the way that they gave up as well. People
Hmm.
really didn't look after them, and so they might have given up earlier on children. So um,
So they
it was
started off
interesting.
with all the right intentions, but eventually
Yeah,
their will was broken down.
exactly that. And actually, I was working in the youth offending service, and I had a kid that was remanded to local authority care, um, not to a secure unit, but to foster care, because if they felt that their offending was related to their home circumstance, they could remand them to local authority foster care, um, and placing these kids. So they're offending, they're all over the place. Trying to get a foster carer to take them was pretty tricky, because most foster carers were coming into it to look after a nice, sweet little one, or, sibling group or something. So there I was, kids sitting there in my office, and I'm having to ring round every single foster carer, foster care agency, because there's independent agencies and charities like Bernardo's that they also have foster carers. So once you've used up all your resources in the local authority trying to find a foster carer, you then go to the outside agencies. So you go to Bernardo's, you go to the independent agencies that might be profit, might be not for profit,
Hmm.
and you go down your big list. And I get, I don't know, right to the bottom, and I ring this little agency, a small service that had been set up, and the person that answered the phone was the guy who had been the overall director of the youth project, of which the young women's group was part of. So it was like, oh, that's where you went. You became a social worker. Oh, yeah, you're there. How great. And, I'm talking to him and I'm saying, yeah, but have you got a place for this young man that, needs? And as it was, they didn't have any vacancies, but he kept my number, rang me back. I did manage to get a place for that young man eventually. And but Mac rang me back, and said, look, be great to come, to see you. In fact, we're actually looking for a senior practitioner. We're looking for a social worker to work with us in our fostering service, uh, not for profit organisation, lovely ethos and values. And the reason he'd set that service up is because, as director of the youth project that the women's group was part of, there was an under 21s coffee bar that basically worked with under 21s who were homeless. And he was seeing the same thing. He was seeing all these homeless young people that had been in the care system. And he said, he thought this enough is enough. There needs to be foster carers that will be extra supported, extra trained, extra looked after, so that they will hang on in there with these kids. And when they get to 16 or get to 18, they don't have to leave home. They can stay with those families. And those were the people he tried to recruit, and was fairly successful at it. So yeah, they were tiny then. I went out. Yeah, so
Wow.
that was it. I went and visited them. He invited me to lunch. It's a bit cheeky. He invited me to lunch when it happened to be the foster carers training day. So all the foster carers were there. And once I met them all, there was just no way I couldn't go and work with them really. So that was how I came to work within fostering. Um, and
Right. I mean, it gives it does warm the heart to hear that story, and it gives you hope. But then, as time progresses, I'm sure it must be an incredible roller coaster of emotions, the highs and the lows. I can't even imagine the actual, as I say, the whole range of emotions that you must go through dealing with the different circumstances. And you think, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel here, and then you come up against a situation, bureaucracy, red tape, bashing your head against a brick wall. You must feel sometimes that the system had failed you, right?
yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because as someone working, as a social worker in that environment, supporting foster carers, matching children with carers, moving children onto adoption, um, that's all the kind of wonderful part of it, and what you're in it for. But there's all the other stuff, like you say, all the bureaucracy, the absolute stretch on resources, and the amount of work that you have to do in a very limited amount of time. And you have to get it right, because if you don't get it right, it's catastrophic for those
Mm,
families and for those children. But have you ever seen that Stretch Armstrong?
yeah.
You know, that Stretch Armstrong.
Very
I used to,
70s, very
you know
70s
what?
toy.
It really felt at times like there'd be like one arm would be stretched out, and that would be the needs of the children, which was absolutely paramount. And then on the other hand, you've been pulled and stretched into another direction by Ofsted, who are coming in to inspect and putting a different level of pressure. And then the other stretch with the whole funding issues, and then the other arm being, or leg being pulled in a direction in terms of what the team and the social workers needed, and the whole team around the child needed. And and it it's a fantastic role, but you have many hats on to many
Mhm.
people. So you're there to support the families, without a doubt. You're there to support the children. um, that's the first thing that you're there to do, but it's all
And
the
the,
other bits that people don't
with
see.
so
That
much responsibility, with so much responsibility weighing so heavy on your shoulders, it's not something that you look at the clock at 5 o'clock and you clock out and you go home and you don't bring your work home with you, because I'm assuming it's with you constantly all the time.
Yeah, I mean, for the first 10 years working in fostering, was it 10 years? About the first 10 years, I think I was on call every other week for the first 6 years or so. And then we got another social worker, and then it could be every third week. And that would be on call sort of all night and all weekend after working all week. So, I mean, basically, I just never turned my phone off. So my work
Mhm.
phone was on day and night.
Well,
And
I'm
not
just getting
just
a
when I
message.
was on
Just
call.
getting a message here from Becky. Becky asks you. She says you are
Oh,
still
yeah.
much loved and missed at Casper. We carry on your good work.
Thanks, Becky.
Hi, Becky.
That's nice.
Okay, so I'm just looking at some notes here. Working along we covered you. I asked you earlier if there were any main points that we wanted to focus on. We covered about the bad press that social workers received, and over time, uh, you would you must have felt that you were getting somewhere, and then there'd be a tragic circumstances in the papers of whatever. I mean, there's automatically a few cases that spring to mind, whether recently or over the last 15 or 20 years, and
Yeah,
you kind of coming back around again.
yeah, exactly that. And I think I think that's the always in every social worker's in the back of my mind through my whole career has been the what if this is the one, if this is a child that I can't protect. you know um
Hmm.
that's always in the back of our minds. And we we swing so many different ways. I mean, if you, particularly with children who are in care. I mean, when I first started working in fostering, the guidance for foster carers were, that they shouldn't cuddle the children, or that if they were bathing children, they should have swimming trunks on, small children, because this the fear of abuse, the fear of being accused of abuse, the whole sort of safeguarding around children had sort of swung from there hardly being any, to suddenly these huge sort of rules that were being put in place to supposedly safeguard foster carers, but also to safeguard children, and it meant that children weren't being taught and shown what safe touch is and what safe cuddles are, because they'd experienced something so different, possibly before coming into care. And when I've kind of been doing this for 25, 26 years, and you see a constant swing of relaxing of rules, if you like, and
Mhm.
boundaries around, because it feels like it's safer and better for children to live in that environment, and then something goes wrong, and then we get a whole new set of legislation or a whole new set of rules or a whole new set of guidance, and we go back the other way. So,
Who's making those decisions? Because
well, it's
you'd think
I
that
mean,
people would learn from the past.
well, you would, haven't you? But without getting political, I mean, look at the mistakes are made over and over and over again, aren't they?
Mhm. A lot of
So
it is, I mean, I'm the least political person. I'm the least qualified to make any political commentary. But I would assume that a lot of it is just point scoring, right? People saying the right things. What's the word? They're just lip service, just because
yeah,
they believe that that's what's got to be
yeah.
done.
I mean, the reality, Andy, is that every time there is a child death, every time something goes wrong, there is an inquiry. We've had 500, over 500, I think, child death inquiries, reports out. And every time that happens, there's learning that comes from that. And that learning is shared across the whole profession. And we might adjust our training and our practice to do with that. And then it fades again. And
But
then
is
it
there
fades
ever
again.
any difference in what you learn? Is there ever been, I mean, surely,
No, the
you know,
messages are the same. The failings are always the same. It's always that, particularly where awful things are happening to children, it tends to be a lack of communication between all the people that are involved in that child's life. So the
mhm,
teachers didn't report something, or health visitors, or doctors, or, but it's always the social services that will get the blame if something goes wrong. So I guess the buck always stops with social services. But instead of us seeing, and it's not just in child protection, it's in all that, actually it's all of our responsibility, isn't it, to make sure that children are well and happy and living the best lives they can. The whole kind of community bringing up a child thing, we've lost that,
mhm.
so much of that, the whole no ball games outside, on the green, instead of people just letting kids play and joining in with that. And I think, you know, when children go into foster care, foster carers do have a fantastic support network, and they do have a fantastic community around them, and they support each other. Maybe if the investment and time and energy and money went into supporting families way earlier, before children ever needed to come into care, we wouldn't have many children in the care system. So,
Angela says a very clear point. The turnover of staff contributes to the learning being lost. And
oh,
Sarah Battersby says the services are still struggling to be joined up.
yes,
So
they are.
yeah, it must be so terribly frustrating. Um,
It is.
but as you say, having friends who are foster parents, foster carers. How do you? The
Well, it's a
same.
really interesting one, the language thing, because for some organisation call all their foster carers foster carers. Some organisations call them foster parents. Some children like to refer to them as parents, mum and dad, or foster parents. Some children would prefer a title foster carer. So there isn't a right or wrong. It depends on who you're working for, or what you like to be called if you're a foster carer or a foster parent. So
Hmm.
uh, there isn't one. We've never been able to decide what's the right
Right.
one.
Well, we focused, I feel we focused a little bit on some of the issues that you faced, but you've also covered some of the joy, the success
Yeah,
stories that,
yeah,
that that you've enjoyed throughout the many years. The sense of achievement, the sense of, we had a conversation again. I'll mention again, and you talked about you'd like to think of the good that you've done for so many different children down the years. And tell us a story where you said you bumped into somebody who's in her early 30s now, and she'd said that because of the way that you treated her, you had kind of changed her life.
I think, yeah, her life has. Yeah, there's one young woman that I am still in contact with, and I've known her since she was 6. She had lots and lots of different moves in her life and a lot of loss. And her foster mum actually passed away when she was 16. So yeah, she had quite a struggle, but she's doing really well. And I just said to her, how have you done this? So fantastic. How have you? And she said, you just never gave up on me, Lynn. You just always tried something else when things were going wrong, and I didn't want to do anything, and you just always, you never gave up. You always talked about and thought about what else could you do for me, and and that made the difference. So I guess that's, I didn't know that at the time. And, you know, I also remember a kid who I worked with for 2 years who never once looked me in the eye. He used to hang his head. He hardly said anything. He just grunted. He was on a 2-year probation order. He was in the Youth Justice Service. And he wrote to me years later saying, "You made such a difference in my life." And it's like, he never even looked at me. I'm sure. So, so I always say to people, you never know if you are going to be someone that, I think we can all think back to our own teenage years and, or young adulthood, and think of someone that maybe inspired us. For me, it was a teacher at the tech college who was doing when I was doing A-level sociology, and she said to me, I was a young single mum living on a council estate in London, and it was through education that I managed to, and now I'm head of department at this college. And she said, and I see that in you. I see you have the potential to do anything you want to do. Um, and no one had ever really said it like that to me. And I really am grateful to her. Sybil, name was.
Thank
And
you,
I just
Sybil.
think we don't know, do we, if we're going to be that person for someone else. And foster carers obviously get that opportunity to make the most enormous difference to children, and for the rest of their lives, in all their relationships. You teach them how to be cared for and to love, and you know that's a really special thing. But it's not just foster carers that do that. It's anyone, any adults can come into a young person's life and make a difference to them. And you never know if you're doing that at the time, but hold in mind that you might be. um, that's what I say.
Well, everything that you've done has been with a big heart, and it has been hugely rewarding, and it shows by the friends that you have around you and the company that you keep. Um, so let's talk about some of the company that you keep. Somewhere down the line, when your son was older,
Yeah.
always been into music, the opportunity arose for you to be able to think, okay, you know what, I want to go out and dance.
Yeah, well, when you lot were all raving like mad, I was, studying and looking after my son and doing things, being a housewife person. So it wasn't really until I was 40 that I discovered, I think my first Southport was probably when I was 40, dance weekender. Well, actually, I went to Ibiza. Yes, I went to Ibiza, met up with a group of people who told me about Southport. So I went to Southport, and from Southport discovered Sunsea Beat. And as kind of went to all of those. I think last year was the first year that I didn't. No, this year is the first year I didn't go. And from that discovered vocal booth, and
Well,
yeah, we
that's where our paths would have crossed initially at Sunset Beat. The I and I've joked about this with yourself and Mark on a few occasions. I always recall because you were always so happy, so bubbly, so smiley, right at the front. You say you're always in the back, but you weren't because I have a vivid memory of you right up the front in the speakers, having the time of your life in this red and white polka dot bikini. I vividly remember it, and and then and then I think it was the year after.
yeah.
I'm not familiar with the actual years that it was, but then I think it was the year after you introduced me to Mark. I mean, we got talking in passing as comrades on the dance floor, and then the next time I would get to talk to Mark. So tell us about how you guys met.
We met just locally in Whitstable. I was on, and we'd been seeing each other for a little while. I remember walking down to work and looking up, and there's a "You Are Nice" poster on the wall, which was a little
Vandal,
message to me
vandalism,
from
mindless vandalism.
mindless vandalism indeed. But yeah, that first year that Mark and I were together, I'd already booked to go to Southport and go to Croatia as well. So, and all the tickets were sold out and the places were full, and I was going with girlfriends. So he had to kind of wave goodbye to me, and it was like, yeah, but next year you'll be with me. And I think that was 2012, 2013 maybe. But yeah, I remember thinking, God, what if he doesn't like it? Because this is just, I love this so much. And of course, he just loved every moment, and everyone loved him. And I didn't know for quite a long time that he DJ'd for 12 years in Bristol. He'd always, made homemade decks or something, and when he was still living in Whitstable. So he's been playing music and enjoying that for a lifetime really. But more a
Wonderful.
kind of tech house boy. But
But
I got it.
he's got a touch of soul in him. Well, I'm sure people will have seen him in the background. I am at some point going to be talking to Mark because he has his own interesting story. So I'll say hello, Mark, and then we'll forget about Mark because we want to
Talk to him
we want
another
to.
time.
Yeah, we want to shine the light on yourself. So you guys were then going to Sunset Beat, loving it there. As I say, most of the people who are watching this will be more than aware of you both. And if they ever see a sticker, "You Are Nice" on all of the photos, that's your trademark. So that also just goes to reflect, you always going out trying to spread joy everywhere you go, right?
And well, I like to think so. I mean, that those stickers, that's all it ever was about. It was like it was just about spread the niceness. There's just so much in this world that is difficult, and I think, yeah, spreading a little bit of joy. Just it's amazing how people just love a sticker.
And that
And
great, I mean, not huge expense, but there is still expense involved for you to actually do it. So it's
we don't get so many now. It's when we were both working. I'm not working so much now, and yeah, we've had a bit of a life change, but yeah, we're still spread the
There
niceness.
was that awkward shift in the seat there when you mentioned about the life change.
Mhm.
The many years that you've worked in the field that you have done. you made a comment to me that all of the trauma that you've had to deal with down the years, it doesn't come without its own circumstances. You felt a lot of that pressure sometimes, right? When you take the work home with you.
I think so, and I just think the adrenaline and the kind of the pace that you work, for so many years, without stopping. I think it does take its toll a little bit, and as you know, Andy, I've I was diagnosed with a brain tumor just 2 years ago. Now that's not caused by stress at work. But the thing about continuously never stopping and giving yourself a break, I think, does take a toll on your general health anyway. And all the social workers and nurses I know and people that have been in that field, do live a pretty unhealthy lifestyle on the whole because you're carrying, because of the stress that you carry, maybe. And I think I knew that I couldn't work to the level that was needed um, whilst going through radiotherapy treatment or just carrying the load of actually, what this tumor might mean for me in my life. And so I've taken a step back from the work and, I vice chair panels and reviews for foster carers independently. So I still keep my hand in and I see how those families are doing, and it's a lovely, lovely bit of work, but without all the pressure and stress of being responsible for the safeguarding of all the children that are in the organisation that I work for. So it's taken a step back, and I think that's quite good for my well-being.
It
But I
is.
miss.
It is. But you made a comment when we were talking with Angela. She expressed some guilt. I think she said about not being able to be on the front line at certain times, and
Yeah,
you also made the same comment that you have that desire, that need sometimes to be more hands on.
yeah, yeah. I really, that really resonated with me when Angela said that, because I moved into management, and I was managing services, and but I still felt that I was actually working directly with families as well. I was able to do that, but obviously, the last 2 years I haven't been doing that, and that was through a pandemic when I know the pressure was really on for social workers and families looking after children. None of that work stopped when everything else closed down. And of course, children weren't going to school, so there weren't as many people, offering care and support. Foster carers were much more isolated with those families, with those children, as were families that had children at home that needed support. And I wasn't doing any of that. And I feel at a time where it was really, really needed. But I actually, for the first time in my life, I thought I look after myself. Maybe first is needed now. So
Most definitely. Well, you mentioned about the diagnosis that came 2 years ago. You say now. Have I'm just reading a few people here have been passing by and sending you some love, and got to say hi to Wendy and to Jane for passing through. Thank you for being here, ladies. The I know you made it over to Spain with us this year, so you are taking it easy. For anybody that won't be aware of yourself and the journey that you've been on in recent times, how are you feeling? How are your energy levels? Are you doing well? Your spirit is high.
yeah, my spirit is pretty high. I mean, I had treatment in June. Radiotherapy does take its toll in terms of sort of fatigue, which is kind of different to being tired. It's more like jet lag. You just hit a wall and can't do anything really. Body feels like weight, and that's still happening from time to time, but not definitely not as much. And I have neuropathic pain that I live with all the time now from the tumor, but so on medication for that, which makes you a bit weary in the morning, but it's all manageable given how I structure my life now. And that's the thing. It's, we are amazing creatures that we can adapt to all sorts, can't we? And, coming out to Spain, going to vocal booths and still being able to do that was just fantastic. But, I missed several days, I missed the Friday, I missed the Sunday, because those days I just needed to rest or sleep. But no one would notice, on the outside, everything kind of might look the same. But yeah, it is a shift. It is different. I'm used to being like da, 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 all the time, and now I'm like a little. There's
It,
a smaller amount of energy, but I use it well.
yeah, well,
I
you seem you're definitely managing it. You're definitely in a better place, and with that man by your side behind you, he's definitely giving you a lot of support.
I am very lucky to have the nicest husband in the world, and some lovely friends and family that are really supportive. And I mean, I am, I think, living my best life that I possibly could live, given what's happened. I feel really lucky that am in a position where I can take my pension from the years of working. And I, at 55, I didn't think I'd be kind of semi-retired, but I am, and it's absolutely fine. I love my work and I miss some of it, but I know the benefits of the work that I've done over the years still resonates. I know it's still there, and that's the most important thing, really, to me.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm just looking down at some notes that I'd made. One of the points from us talking off air was that you never gave up. You always, did whatever that you could all the way through there. And you have most definitely left your legacy without a shadow of a doubt. And as you say, more than you probably can be aware of yourself. And then we covered about the fostering, and we cleared up the any negative energy and any negative press, because it's everything is coming from just a place of pure love and desire to make things better for everybody. On a whole, where would you say, without being political, where would you say the whole social care system is at the moment? Is it in a better place? Is it in a bad place?
On its knees, just the
Right.
same as our National Health Service. On their knees, the people that are working within those services are doing the very best they can, with more and more and more needed, and less resources. And people are leaving in droves, just as they are the health service. Um, and it's a huge shame. I mean, in terms of foster carers, there's a huge shortage, and always has been a shortage of foster carers that want to look after particularly teenagers or very large sibling groups. I mean, if I had a magic wand, all the money and resources would go into really, really supporting families in those early years, not waiting for the crisis when they cannot cope or they've harmed their children because they are just unable to get the help they need to come off drugs or alcohol, or abuse, or get out of poverty, or whatever reasons that they might find themselves in. um, but that just isn't that never happens. It's not good politics to put loads and loads of money into early years, because you don't see the benefit of that until those children are grown up and are not in prison. You don't see it. So politically, it never happened. Um, and that's a crying shame. But having said all of that, I think it still is and can be the absolute best job in the world to go, to work in social work. There's so many different areas you can be in. It's a fantastic career, and the people that you work with, and the team around you, is what keeps you going for most part. And I know the foster carers will say the same. It's their foster carer colleagues, the people that are around them, that support them, that make it possible to hang on in there, and seeing how well the children do when they're given love and care and opportunity. But yeah, it makes me sad that we can't do more for children and their families in the first place. So they don't need, so many of them don't need to come into care. What can we do?
Uh, it's it's if only like did you say about a magic wand earlier? If only you had a
Yeah.
magic wand.
Um,
Well, as I'm sitting listening to your very passionate words, as I did say to you, everybody is just heaping praise upon you. They've been sharing the stream. There are lots of comments. Wendy says she agrees with you about recruiting for foster carers. We are absolutely desperate for them up in Leeds. And Jane is telling you how proud of you she is. Mrs. Battersby, still so much passion from the professionals in the field, but they're up against it at every turn. And Angel joins us saying, thank you. I've shared this with a few of my friends so they can watch it back too. As I did say, we always get a lot of people coming back and watching the recordings. So is there still a You Are Nice website active?
Mark, is there a You a Nice website, darling? No. No.
There isn't, but I'm sure there will be stickers around at some point for
Well,
for
there's
people
always
to be
stickers.
able to
I
see.
think there was this thing, there was this kind of like a kind of thing that it was our brand or something, like it was a kind of business, or it was just a fun. It was just a bit of fun. We ended up, I know we did some t-shirts once and just for ourselves and for a few friends, and then there was one Sensi Beat where we just kept getting messages saying, can you do us a t-shirt? And we'd got a press at home, and we had this, it was like a factory in this room. It was just crazy of us doing t-shirts. I was like having to buy t-shirts and vests from H&M or something, and then we'd be sitting there weaving out it's
But the
quite
badges,
complicated
do I remember
actually.
badges at some point?
Yeah, we did badges last year at Vocal Booth. That was our first year with badges, because we kind of had this thing about the environment, and with the stickers, and they fall off, and what if they wash into the sea or something? So but yeah, we went back to stickers
And
this
Paul DJP says you need to be upgraded from nice to amazing. That's my word. Incredible,
Thank
incredible.
you.
I use that word a lot. Lynn, Melinda, we have been talking for, as I did say, we've been talking, would you believe, for an hour and 12 minutes.
We've gone over. It's too
That's all
late.
right. There's no limit. Is there any final words that we can leave? I think you've done a great service to the cause. I think you've been a great advertisement. And at some point, my aim, the whole aim of doing these conversations is that someone comes across them, finds out a little bit more about you, and you never know what it's going to inspire. And your legacy has been kicked up just a little bit more, a little notch further. So thank you for that. I did start to get around before I waffled off. Is there anything that I've missed? Anything extra
Well,
that you want to
I
add?
have to say the thing that's kept me going um, throughout social work, as well as the support of lovely colleagues and great supervision and all of those things, is being able to have that break and come out to the sunshine and dance with friends to beautiful music. It's the best reset ever, and I think if you've got young people who are struggling, get them into music, play music, dance with them. That's what we need to be doing. I think I never really thought about, with foster carers saying, we should have put on more discos. We really should have done that for them, and for them, for them to have that release too. Becky, if you're still listening, that's what you should be doing with the families.
There you
We
go.
all need a
She never
blowout.
stops. She never stops. Angela says, you're simply amazing, Lynn. The courage, the positivity, and the difference you've made and continue to make to people who come into contact with you is incredible. Thank you for just being you. We love you,
Oh,
Lynn. There
thanks.
you go. And on that note, if that doesn't draw a tear, then we failed. Ladies and gentlemen, we failed. Debs and Jeff are watching as well. They're saying thank you. It was really interesting. You most certainly are an amazing human. And I'm sure as I start to wrap up, there will be more comments flooding in. Lynn, thank you for giving me your time this evening.
Oh, it's a
I will
pleasure. Thank
say
you.
a few words goodbye, and I'm proud to have been able to capture your story. So thank you
Oh,
for giving me your time
thank
tonight.
you, and thank you to the support that you gave me, and the family fund gave me as well when I was having my treatment, and I needed somewhere to stay in London. It made all the difference. It made such a difference. I'm really really grateful. I'm glad to support the family fund, and I would just say to everyone out there, you just never know when life changes
Hmm.
like that, and you never know
Well,
when you might need something. So
I did actually just put some words in the Vocal Booth newsletter. Family 237 Fund. We put some money. Lynn reached out and wasn't afraid to say that she needed some help, and we put it to the people, and we were happy to be able to give you that to take one less piece of stress at a very stressful time for you. So that's the power of community, and that's what we try to do, and that's what I try to do with these streams. So you're more than welcome. I'm happy, so happy that the money went to good use.
thank you.
Okay,
Take
so
care.
Lynn, I will say goodbye, and I'm going to say a few more words to the people
Bye,
watching us.
lovely
Thank you, my
people.
love. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers. Oh wow, that was very very wonderful, wasn't it? The beautiful Melinda. Who knew she was a Melinda? Let me scroll through some of these messages. Feel free to leave any comments, guys, if you want me to read them out. I'm about 40 seconds behind. So there's loves and applause coming in. Phil says, my dad said that years ago for gingerbread, one parent families. I'm sorry, Phil, I can't work that out. My dad, that years ago for gingerbread, one parent families, that is now a massive charity. Okay, I think I can work that out somewhere in my mind. Lots of hearts coming in as well. After that wonderful conversation, I feel that I don't want to draw reference to my flashy lights and my brand new camera because it seems rather irrelevant. So I'll do that another time. On the screen here, you can see next week the topic of conversation is going to be avoiding procrastination. After me just saying, I'll talk about my camera another time. Why putting things off is holding you back. And that's going to be with Sophia Bailey Larson. Now, Sophia is a woman I've met relatively recently. Not many of the Vocal Booth family, not many of the people who watch my stream will be familiar with Sophia or yeah, Sophia. I met her on a boat party a couple of months ago when I was DJing with Mikey. We got talking. We're now friends on Facebook, and I'm looking forward to finding out a little bit more about her. Um, Joanne is saying, you're wonderful, Lynn. We love you. Oh, sorry, Phil. So Phil was saying, my dad has done discos associated to gingerbread. Sorry, he had a tear in his eye. Phil and Kelly, also soldiers in their own right. We love you guys. We can see here lots of video likes, lots of video shares on the screen. Thank you very much. And to the bottom right hand corner, I'll say thank you to all of the Access members. Your work, your contribution is invaluable. It's helped me get this flashy camera. It's helped a few other things as well I'm going to be talking about in a couple of weeks. I got one really exciting piece of news that I want to share with you, but it's not quite ready yet. So hold tight for that. You'll see all of these logos on the screen of DJs or businesses or self-employed people. When the stream ends, stick around. You'll see your name come up on a roll call. Thank you all so much. As I did say, there was a lot more that I wanted to say, but it all pales into insignificance really after having that really heartwarming conversation with Lynn. So I would just say thank you very much for your attention. As always, if you're watching the recording, please leave a message for Lynn. She would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated. I'll see you soon.